It's a really good question. What I'll say first and foremost is that I do not believe that Jewish voices matter more than anybody else's who are in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle. And of course, certainly not Palestinians. But folks like me in the West, Jewish folks, and particularly white Jewish folks, are much more likely to get platformed
Hmm.
on these issues. Many people are really looking for someone who's white and then someone who is also Jewish to validate the Palestinian struggle that does
Hmm.
not need Jewish validation, that does not need white validation whatsoever. So when I locate myself in the fact that I am Jewish, it's not to say, therefore,
Hmm.
therefore, take my opinion more seriously,
Yeah.
which is something that you do see happen. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks, Jewish folks who self-identify as anti-Zionist are in fact liberal Zionists.
Hmm.
Jewish people are often watering down the struggle, defanging the struggle, not
Hmm.
openly and unapologetically supporting the resistance, the Al Qassam brigades,
Hmm.
who are fighting um,
Yeah.
and defending their people in occupied Palestine. And so for me,
Hmm.
centering the work, or at least noting that I'm coming from a place of being Jewish,
Yeah.
is directly connected to the facts of Jewish complicity.
Yeah.
So that is what makes it relevant, is that the Jewish people overwhelmingly have absorbed Zionism fully and
Hmm.
completely, really, into the community. Every synagogue, every Jewish community center, every Jewish school, every Jewish organization, you know,
Hmm.
is in some way, shape, or form. I mean, and when I say every, I mean almost all, right,
Hmm.
are bought in and supporting the Zionist settler colonial project. And so I think that a lot of times you have you have a lot of Jewish people who are not willing to reckon with what we have wrought in occupied Palestine and how deeply invested our synagogues, our spaces, our community is in upholding a Holocaust in occupied Palestine that has just in the last almost 2 years killed hundreds of thousands of people. We don't even know the number yet.
Hmm.
A brutal, systemic, horrific campaign of starvation, constant bombardment, systemic rape in prisons. And this has been going on for, since the beginning of the Zionist entity. This is nothing new. This is not just Netanyahu. This is the nature of Zionism and Zionist
Hmm.
settler colonialism on the land that the Jewish community has completely absorbed and supported. So when I talk about my Jewishness, it's not to say my opinion is more important because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not at all. It's to assert the need for Jewish people to urgently tear down Zionism within our own community, reckon with our own complicity, and handle it. So, yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. And in one of your May 2025 articles, you described Zionism as a colossal Jewish fascism problem. What compelled you to use those choice of words, and what does it illuminate about the present?
Thank you for that. So, in my recent piece, I talk about Zionism as a colossal fascism problem within the Jewish community for several reasons. I mean, there's numerous ways that one could describe what's happening, right? But one thing that I want to emphasize is that I am not saying that right-wing Zionism is fascism. I'm saying all of Zionism is fascism, and that
Hmm.
includes the liberal Zionists who preach
Yeah.
coexistence, who preach peace, who throw the resistance under the bus,
Mm-hmm.
who are invested in settler futurity on the land. So I am, and it's important to be specific there because there are many people who are Zionists who
Hmm.
would say, well, I'm not a fascist. I just believe, of course, like Israel can exist in some way, shape, or form, or, of course, we condemn, the killing of, of settlers, things like that. Principled anti-Zionism is rooted in Palestinian doctrines like the Thabet, the unchanging principles of the struggle. It's rooted in unwavering support for armed resistance. It's rooted in Palestinians' right of return and not an inch of settler colonial control on the land, essentially. So that's a distinction that I want to make. Specifically, when we talk about Zionism as a fascist ideology, an
Mhm.
innately fascist ideology, not an
Mhm.
ideology that has become fascist or is fascist in its current formation,
Mhm.
it's because it's a settler colonial ideology.
Mhm.
A lot of times when we invoke fascism, folks may think of Nazi fascism,
Mhm.
um, but Nazis and the Zionist project both modeled themselves after uh, U.S. settler colonialism. And this is why so much of the work is rooted in a 1492 analysis as put forth by scholars like Dr. Muhammad Abdu,
Mhm.
as well as Dr. Linda Kikivish.
Mhm.
Um, these are this is a crucial underpinning because um, it is not possible to have a settler colonial project that does not involve mass killing and genocide on the land. So it's innately fascistic. And so I think the vast majority of Jewish people think of their allegiance to Israel as something that's very innocent. You know, it's like, of course, Jewish people need a homeland. Of course, we need it to be safe. Of
Yeah.
course, the Holocaust. That is the line that the vast majority of Jewish people adhere to when it
Yeah.
comes to Israel. It's it's not accepted at all in Judaism to completely reject Israel and to support the armed resistance. There is not any space for that. And it's important to talk about the ways in which Jewish supremacy and fascism has essentially become a bedrock of Jewish peoplehood right now. And we've
Mhm.
seen this allegiance really only tighten in many ways, even though there are some younger Jewish people who are now seeing, you know, Israel for what it is and trying to defect as
Mhm.
anti-Zionists. Actual anti-Zionism represents an extremely, extremely, extremely small minority of people. So I think that first and foremost, Jewish people need to reckon with the fact that Zionism is indeed an innately fascistic ideology that cannot be supported in any way, shape, or form, and that we seek the dissolution of Israel in its entirety. And rooting that in a 1492 analysis, we also seek the dissolution of America. For me, those are absolutely intertwined. And so reckoning with settlerhood writ large, not just settlerhood in occupied Palestine, but recognizing that many folks are also settlers on Turtle Island and what that means in terms of commitments to indigenous people on the land.
Can you expand a little bit about 1492 and Turtle Island as you just mentioned there, for our listeners?
Certainly. And this is really something that, you know, I have felt really fortunate to learn about. I consider myself a student of the movement of the Palestinian struggle, but really our struggles writ large for liberation. Something that our shared friend Dr. Muhammad Abdu, who I know has been a guest
Mm,
on this podcast,
yeah.
discusses is the ways in which Columbus, as a crusader, who, when he first arrived on Turtle Island, he and other crusaders were using the framework that they learned from essentially slaughtering Muslims in Al
Hmm.
Andalusia in Spain. They were referring to the indigenous people that they encountered on Turtle Island, the Taino people, you know, using references from how they described battling Muslims, for
Hmm.
instance, right? And Columbus only went on his quest where he thought he landed in India and landed, of course, you know, on the shores of Turtle Island. He was seeking to gain wealth in order to conquer Jerusalem. So again,
Hmm.
like the conquering of Jerusalem, the Euro and then Euro American conquering of Jerusalem, as well as innate Islamophobia, is rooted in the bedrock of the creation of the
Hmm.
quote unquote new world, right? And this is what Muhammad Abdu writes about.
Hmm.
Um, and again, the Zionist project is based off of the blueprints of the ongoing genocides of Black and Indigenous people on Turtle Island and those strategies. So Israel is an appendage of America and the Euro American project. Um, it it's not just something that America funds. It's not just America sending the weapons. It is an extension of the Euro-American empire, and we as Jewish people function as the moral shield, the soldiers, the we are the willing settler colonial soldiers who carry water for crusading empire,
Mm-hmm.
and execute this bloody Holocaust, and
Mm-hmm.
have soaked it so deeply into the Jewish identity that most Jewish people think that this right to living and slaughtering on stolen land is innate to the Jewish identity at this
Mm-hmm.
point. So for me, it's always important to recognize the roots, the 1492 roots, while also not letting Jewish people off the hook for how we are the ones carrying this out and systemically have structured it into the Jewish ecosystem such that
Mm-hmm.
there is deep complicity on so many levels within the Jewish community in carrying out this Holocaust by the self-proclaimed Jewish state that has the Star of David, on
Mm-hmm.
on its tanks, that burns it into Palestinian skin, that waves
Mm-hmm.
it proudly, that is very proud of its sadism and very proud of doing that in the name of global Jewish peoplehood.
Thank you for providing that context. You've also written about how childhood synagogue rituals were tied to Zionist myths, such as planting trees in Israel, celebrating Independence Day. What cracked open the story of a land without people for people without land, and what came after? How did leaving behind those stories transform the way you understood Judaism itself?
Sure. So I grew up very, very deep in the Jewish community. And honestly, my memories in synagogue and in the Jewish community are some of my most cherished childhood memories.
Hmm.
I went to synagogue very frequently. I was just extremely active, and it was a point of real centrality in my family,
Hmm.
Judaism. But my family really valued social justice. My parents were both activists and organizers and educators, and
Hmm.
they raised us really around the values of education, Judaism, and justice. And so the Zionist indoctrination was primarily coming from the Jewish institutions in which I grew up, and it was very, very seemingly benign,
Hmm.
which is how it becomes so insidious and how most Jewish people grow up with
Hmm.
their Zionism so deeply entwined in their Judaism that it becomes, I mean, seemingly impossible or almost impossible, as we've seen, for them
Hmm.
to disconnect these two things. But the way in which it manifests is, like you said, by weaving it into ancient Jewish ritual, like Tu
Ah,
B'Shvat.
okay.
Tu B'Shvat you mentioned,
Yeah,
which celebrates the trees.
yeah.
And most Jewish kids give money to plant trees in occupied Palestine, and
Interesting.
specifically are giving to the Jewish National Fund, which is an organization that has absolutely devastated
Hmm.
the local environment across occupied Palestine by
Yeah,
uprooting olive trees, ancient
yeah.
sacred olive trees, and planting invasive pines, flammable invasive pines that remind the settler colonial occupiers of their European
Hmm.
roots.
Yeah.
And so this entire and in addition, the Jewish National Fund's pine trees intentionally covered over the mass slaughter on the land. So as a child in synagogue, you're just taught Israel's wonderful. You're taught all these myths about Israel and how it's beautiful and how it's for us and how it was empty and how we need it after the Holocaust. All these lies, all these myths. Yeah, things like it's Israel's birthday, it's we have pride, let's, have a celebration, etc. So you grow up having this just, seemingly seamlessly, essentially weaved into really ancient, beautiful Jewish
Hmm.
ritual and holidays. So, and you're also taught that those who criticize Israel don't understand because they're not Jewish and they
Hmm.
probably are anti Semitic. And that's taught so naturally that
Hmm.
most Jewish people never move out of it. That does
Yeah.
not I just want to be clear that the indoctrination that happens for folks who grew up in the Jewish community does
Mm-hmm.
not let Jewish people off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
We all grow up with certain ways in which we're indoctrinated, whether that is allegiance to America, whether that is whiteness, what have you. Like, it's a responsibility for Jewish people to understand this is what Zionism actually is.
Mm-hmm.
It is severed heads. It is slaughtered children. It is systemic rape in torture camps. That's what Zionism is, because that is Zionism's impact on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
the myths that we were taught, it's our responsibility to rapidly seek to undo that so that we can start moving in principled solidarity, because the responsibility really does lie on us. If Jewish people did not accept so willingly
Yeah.
that this settler colony on stolen land was part of
Mm-hmm.
Jewish identity, it
Mm-hmm.
would not be able to continue. We function as the soldier, but also the moral shield.
This brings me to something you've argued in some of your work. That is the rhetoric of Jewish safety and how that has been weaponized to equate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. In your mind, how does this narrative of Jewish safety protect the state while endangering both Palestinians and dissenting Jews?
It's a great question. Um, the American state, as well as the Israeli state, as well as Zionists writ large, will employ the language of Jewish safety in order to cover up a mass Holocaust that is being committed in the name of protecting Jewish people.
Hmm.
It's a complete inversion of essentially colonizer and colonized.
Hmm.
The idea that we are focusing on the feelings of Jewish people while
Hmm.
Palestinians are systemically starved to death, shot to death,
Yeah.
killed in every most brutal way possible,
Hmm.
dying under the rubble
Yeah.
of bombs dropped by proudly Jewish soldiers
Hmm.
that are backed by Euro America. The idea that we're supposed to be obsessed with how do Jewish people feel
Hmm.
is rooted in obscene anti-Palestinian racism
Hmm.
and Islamophobia.
Yeah.
We are the way in which the Holocaust has been weaponized in order to exceptionalize Jewish pain and victimhood
Hmm.
as an eternal shield to kill Palestinians
Hmm.
is something that we see executed every single day by Zionists. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, it's you see it in the way that universities are paying millions of dollars to Jewish faculty or students for
Hmm.
the pain that they suffered, quote unquote,
Yeah.
um, for people who are trying to stop a Holocaust in occupied Palestine.
Yeah.
It's um, it's egregious, and people should not give it 1 inch of space. People should not entertain the concept of Jewish safety whatsoever. And it's often liberal Zionists who will talk about Jewish safety in the same breath as talking about Palestinian liberation, and it's deeply insulting. There is no comparison. We are not the victims. We are the ones who are committing this Holocaust. And it
Hmm.
really just goes to show how cheap Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim lives are
Hmm.
to Euro America in particular. That can be invoked, Jewish people as the eternal victim.
You've also described Sheryl Sandberg, the billionaire former CEO, starring in a Zionist propaganda film after October 7th, crying wolf tears about a future Holocaust while Gaza is being burned. What do these performances of victimhood accomplish for the empire?
Yeah, so in that clip, Sheryl Sandberg said, if it came to it, if there was another Holocaust, would you hide me? Would you hide me? The idea that this white billionaire
Yeah.
would need to be hidden in this hallucinated idea that she is the victim
Yeah.
when Palestinians are being slaughtered in the tens and hundreds of thousands right now. It's um it's it's a way in which Zionism has become in many ways, the tip of the spear of of this Euro-American settler colonial project. You know, being
Mhm.
77 years in, as
Mhm.
America is 533 years into their project,
Yeah.
in this iteration, you have a Euro-American settler colonial project that has the benefit, because Jewish people, we have opted in to this, has the benefit of shrouding itself in this victimhood. It's like, well, what are you
Yeah.
gonna, are you anti-Semitic? And
Mhm.
people in general are so afraid of being called anti-Semitic that
Mhm.
Zionists just play that track on repeat
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the costs of that can be high for some folks. Like, you know, the state is, you know, looking for quote unquote anti-Semitic content, actually just anti-Zionist content, to
Mhm.
determine things like visas.
Yeah.
And so they're able to hide behind the idea that they are helping Jews,
Mhm.
that they care about Jews, and they're protecting Jews in order to send ICE squads, in order to discriminate, incarcerate, and kill.
Mhm.
So we function as that. We, as specifically white Jewish people and
Mhm.
Jewish people writ large, function as this very convenient intermediary force that protects empire in doing a disgusting live streamed Holocaust
Yeah.
in Gaza and across occupied Palestine, while still
Mhm.
maintaining a posture of victimhood, a complete reversal of victim and offender.